Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Committee for Monmouthshire County Council on the 6th of October 2020. My name is Denzel Turbill. I'm a solicitor employed by Monmouthshire County Council and the legal advisor to the Planning Committee. The first item of business on the agenda today is the election of the chair. So can I go out and ask if there's any nominations?
Councillor Wills chair.
Can I second that, please, Maureen Power? I
So
second Ruth Edwards.
Councillor Ruth Edwards has been nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations? If not, can I ask that a poll be put in the chat bar for the members to vote on in the normal manner? So I believe the members should now have a motion in front of them to vote on for, against or abstain in relation to Councillor Ruth Edwards being nominated as the chair. Can I ask everyone to submit their votes?
I haven't got the chat bar yet, Denzel.
It is in the chat bar if you can.
I got it, Peter.
Well, what are we pushing? Well, mine isn't here. Oh, I see. All right, thank you.
So we've now had 12 responses for, that's 13 responses for now, none against and no abstentions. So I can declare that the result of that motion is that Councillor Ruth Edwards has been re-elected as chair for the Planning Committee. I'll now hand over to the chair to take over item 2 of the agenda. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much indeed. I would like now to propose that County Councillor Peter Clark assist me as well again as Vice Chair.
Second.
Thank you. We need to go to the vote for that. Vote for Vice Chair, Denzel.
Oh, sorry. Well, I thought poll would appear again. Yes, the poll's there. So we've had 10 responses so far, 10 of 4. There's none against and no abstentions. So again, that's the clear majority in favour of Councillor Peter Clark being elected as the Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, all of those that have voted, and it's very humbling for me to be voted again as Chair of the Planning Committee. You obviously have supported me very well indeed in the past, and I almost look on you all as an extension to my family because we've been together for so long. Anyway, it's been trying times for us all, but we seem to be progressing with our planning. So welcome everybody. I have a piece to read out again now to all those that are watching as well and all members that are attending. So welcome everybody to this meeting, the Planning Committee, which is being held fully remotely. This meeting has been held in accordance with the emergency legislation that enables the Council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the Council's constitution, and ensures that the Council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking directly to the committee to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the Members' Code of Conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they are in a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make the request clear in that area, and I will invite you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you would then unmute your microphone and switch your cameras back on. And please, I plead to you to not speak to me or to an officer unless you have put your hand up in the chat bar first, so that you could be cordially invited. Otherwise it can make a lot of confusion if you just come in without doing so. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirement to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast a vote due to technical issues. The decision of the committee will remain valid. I have received apologies of absence from today's councillors. If Richard, if you could possibly give me the names of those that have apologised for today's meeting.
Chair, I haven't received any apologies for today's meeting.
Right, thank you very much indeed. And we will now continue with declarations of interest, please.
Chair, just the one. I am a member of Abergavenny Civic Society, although I have taken no part in any consideration of the applications that are before us this afternoon on behalf of the Society. Thank you.
Right, that's Councillor Giles Howard, I believe. And will all officers please, when you're invited to speak on an issue, could you please give your name and your title, as you know we've always done, so that those who are watching will understand who's who. And also the members, I will call you by name anyway, so that will be already done. To confirm the accuracy of the meetings of the previous meeting, if they are possible to move, and I will also, that being done, if there is no inaccuracies, and I will sign the minutes at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, there's no raise your hand in the chat bar, but I did want to request a couple of amendments to the minutes, if I could, Chair, please.
Is it possible to have a chat bar, please, officer?
Just bear with me a second, Chair, I'll do that.
Right, thank you, Richard.
While you're waiting, Chair, I sent apologies to Dave Evans. I don't think he's with us. He's in hospital.
Right, thank you. I will make sure that that is noted. Thank you, Councillor Eason.
It's in the chat bar, Chair.
Right, thank you. Do you wish to comment now, please, Councillor Brown?
Yes, please, Chair. It was a suggested amendment on page 3, which is just after the first point, which was to do with the deferral. I think it was suggested that consideration of the application be deferred to allow the committee to undertake a site inspection. I just wanted to add an additional bullet point which said the reason for refusal of deferral for site visit was due to most members knowing Vinegar Hill area and the cost/delay as a result of COVID-19. I believe that you know, a resident is concerned that no reason for the deferral has been given in the minutes, which is the suggestion of the amendment. And then I've got a second very minor amendment on page 12 for the committee to consider, please, Chair.
I'm sure that will be rectified about Vinegar Hill, and I do remember that actually being discussed in the last meeting. And on page 12, what was your concern there, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, it's only a very minor one here. It's sorry, I'm just scrolling up to it. Where it says, where there's a bullet point before the vote, it says the consideration of condition 3 be deferred, and where it says to demonstrate that up to 4 touring caravans can be accommodated, I think it should say to demonstrate whether or not up to 4 touring caravans. So it's just whether or not, as opposed to demonstrate that up to. It's just a minor amendment, but that was the question that it was deferred for, and the notes don't include that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm sure we'll sort those all out and I'll sign last time's meeting minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brown, thank you. No other amendments needed from anyone else at all for the accuracy of the last minutes? If no, now I shall go on to item 6 on the agenda. And that is the reports of the Planning Committee applications for today. And Phil is taking that, please. This is application, and I will give the number. Obviously, it's DM/2019/01004, and this is inland voice. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen with you for the presentation. Bear with me. Can members all see that?
Nothing yet, Phil.
Okay.
It's not come through yet, Phil. I'm not seeing your screen yet.
Nothing yet? No. Try again.
Great.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a delay. Yeah, apologies for the delay. So, as the Chair said, the first item is DM 2019-1004, Greenfield Merthyr Road, Llanfoist. That's the site plan in front of you of the existing site, the Ordnance Survey plan. You can see it's on the junction of Gypsy Lane and Merthyr Road. So the property Greenfield is as you can see, it's a large detached property set in a large garden. It's a full application proposing the demolition of the existing detached dwelling and its replacement with 18 retirement apartments for residents aged 60 and above, with communal living space and a landscape garden area and courtyard and associated parking. The existing dwelling is accessed via a tarmac drive from Merthyr Road, which is on the sort of northwestern part of the site. If I show you where the cursor is there. That's a better plan showing you where the existing access is off Merthyr Road. The site currently has an extant permission for 4 dwellings, as well as the retention of the existing property. So the proposed apartments would comprise 16 2-bedroom apartments and 2 1-bedroom apartments. Vehicular access is proposed to be provided from Gypsy Lane, so the eastern side of the site, as you can see in that slide there. with the access off Merthyr Road being closed off. 21 off-road parking spaces are also proposed together with extensive landscape grounds. The scheme also incorporates a mobility scooter store, plant room and refuse store close to the main access area. It is proposed for the building to be built through sustainable modular construction, targeting a net zero carbon build. The total site is roughly 4,200 square metres, of which the building occupies 270 square metres. The remainder being private garden parking and landscaped amenity space. The proposed new building will be roughly L-shaped, as you can see there, and be 2 stories in height with the addition of a lower ground floor level on the southeastern elevation that will be used for car parking. The majority of this element will be screened from view by the existing and retained boundary hedge. The proposed design is for a partial 2- and 3-story building with varying floor levels that respond to the existing landscape and context. On that basis, the building will not always be visible as 3 stories. So if I just run through some of the plans, that's the block plan, that's the ground floor plan, which shows the sort of more communal areas in it and the parking. Then there's the apartments on the 1st floor, and the 2nd floor, which again has apartments within it. Those are the elevations. So the top elevation is the east elevation. That would be the one viewed from Gypsy Lane, and the lower picture is from the north elevation, which would be from Merthyr Road. So those would be the internal elevations, which you wouldn't see from any public vantage point. The first one is the west elevation. So that's looking towards the sort of back of the building, really. And if you can visualize it, Merthyr Road is to the left-hand side of that picture. And then the lower one, again, is the internal courtyard shot from the south. Gypsy Lane would be to the right-hand side of that image. And then they show the gable end elevations. So the west elevation would be facing onto, to the left-hand side of that would be facing onto Merthyr Road. And the gable end elevation on the lower picture is the one that would be nearest Orchard Lee. So Gypsy Lane would be to the right-hand side of that part of the site. And then that's a sketch proposal showing how the building reads as a composition, looking down into the sort of landscaped area at the back of the site, the gardens for the development. That's the green roof that's proposed. So in terms of the new building, it'll have maximum heights. So the ridge height to Merthyr Road would be 9.3 metres, and the highest ridge height to Gypsy Lane, 10.1 metres. And that image shows a comparison with the original submission that came in, which was bulkier and higher, particularly on the corner there of the junction. And that's an existing view into the site. You can see some of the conifers that screen the site, albeit several of those will be removed to accommodate the development and to provide to enable a more native species-based landscaping scheme to be submitted. And that's an image showing how the building would look on the corner. It would be set back from the corner, so it won't be right on the frontage there. There'll be a walkway through the hedge there, native species planting to screen and frame the building in the backdrop. And obviously the Blorange is behind it as a very large backdrop to it. And that's looking from Merthyr Road as you approach the site. So you've left the likes of Waitrose behind you and you're approaching Llanfoist. Gypsy Lane is to the left of that mini roundabout and Merthyr Road to the right. Continues to the right. That's the view in from Gypsy Lane. You can see the parent or host dwelling there in the background behind the hedge. And that's looking from Gypsy Lane. You've got the Barrett development on your right hand side, which is obviously complete now. And the site is over to the left hand side. The access would be formed into the hedge there, into the site. That's from Merthyr Road. So again, it's not far from the junction. Site is on the left hand side there, and you've got properties in Bryadine to the right. It's another shot just a bit further down. You see that the site is raised slightly on a bank compared to the road itself and properties on the other side. And then that's the access into the existing property, greenfield, which will be closed up. And that's an aerial photo, so the site is there. You can see on the junction, so you can see that it sits in a very large site, the existing property. And then you've got the context of all the other and more recent development around it and the housing that's more established in the area. Then those are the contextual roadside elevations. The top from the eastern elevation from Gypsy Lane, showing the access into the site and the more three-storey element of the scheme. And then the lower one would be the two-storey element of the scheme facing onto Merthyr Road. And you can get the context of the hills behind, Orchard Lee behind, and the property over to the left-hand side there, being an existing property. And that's in there to look at the comparison with the four-house scheme and the retention of Greenfield itself to show the massing and scale of what was approved beforehand. That was the original, extant approval with two accesses, one from the existing access and one from Gypsy Lane, and how the four plots would sit alongside the existing dwelling. So what I'll do, I'll leave it on one of the elevations to continue my presentation. So one of the main architectural features of the building is its green roof. The roof slopes down towards a neighbouring boundary, reducing the visual impact for adjacent occupiers and improving the relationship to the surrounding streetscape. The green roof has been introduced with the purpose of softening the appearance of the proposal into the surrounding landscape, including the backdrop of the Blorange. The sustainable design feature also supports ecology and sustainable drainage on the site. In terms of materials, a natural colour palette is proposed, which aims to integrate the proposal into the landscape. The proposed buff brick at the corner and base of the two wings is intended visually to hold the lighted timber elements together in the landscape. Brick is a material used throughout the existing residential developments in Llanfoist, and the use of it reflects the domestic nature of the building's function, as well as being in keeping with the existing dwellings. Breaking up the volume using the different materials and recessed walkways, together with a gap in the building form, reduces the overall mass. And climbing plants over the brickwork are also proposed. The entire roof will be finished with the sedum roof, which will further soften the impact of the building when viewed from the surrounding hills. Although still clearly a building that is different in architectural character and scale to that of the residential dwellings and some commercial units in Llanfoist, the proposed amendments, the retained green roof with a well-considered and executed landscaping scheme, will result in a high-quality building. It's considered that the development would not create an adverse impact in the street scene or wider area, subject to the delivery of the proposed landscaping, that is, using hedging, semi-mature tree planting and retention and protection of some of the existing hedging and trees on site. Therefore, it's considered that the proposed development complies with LDP policy DES 1, DES 1. The building has been designed to orientate all balconies and external areas towards the Blorange in order to reduce any potential overlooking issues with neighbouring properties on Merthyr Road and Gypsy Lane. The line of trees to be planted along Merthyr Road will further manage overlooking of houses on the opposite side of Merthyr Road in the longer term. In respect of impact on neighbours, there will be a distance of at least 18 metres from the front elevation of the building facing Merthyr Road to the boundaries of the existing houses opposite on Briardean, and over 21 metres between the respective building elevations. On Gypsy Lane, there is a distance of approximately 31 metres between the elevation of the proposed new building and the existing property across the road called Spring Hill. In terms of overlooking, between the nearest balcony on the rear of the building and the side elevation of Orchard Lee, there will be a distance of approximately 22 metres, and I'd add 14 metres between the building and the boundary. There are no windows proposed on the other end of the proposed building on Merthyr Road, except for a bathroom, and here there will be an 8-metre gap between the proposed building and the boundary. These distances are considered to be significant enough to ensure that there will be no loss of privacy for any local residents. The new tree planting will further screen the boundaries of the site from views both in and out. 21 car parking spaces are proposed and allocated as follows. 6 spaces allocated to residents, 1 space for the house warden manager, 7 spaces for day-to-day servicing and external health providers and cleaners, etc., and 7 visitor spaces. The house warden or manager will manage and control the day-to-day vehicle movements in and out of the facility, including tenants' deliveries that will be restricted to 1 at any given time. A parking permit scheme will also be administered by the house warden on an ongoing basis, and each resident successfully applying for a permit will enter into an agreement which they will then pay an annual permit fee. Permits will be made available to residents on a first come, first served basis, and therefore once permits have been issued for all spaces on a development, a waiting list will be created strictly in order of receipt of application. The justification for concluding the level of parking is acceptable for this scale and type of development proposal is set out comprehensively in paragraph 6.2 of the report, and I do not propose to repeat this in my presentation. It is noted that the Council's highway engineers have no objection to the proposal following the submission of further information relating to the management of parking and deliveries. In terms of the amount of parking spaces provided, there are a number of important material considerations that justify the reduced number of spaces proposed for the scheme compared with normal standards for residential development. One must give weight to the nature of the accommodation for elderly persons. Not all residents would have a private motor vehicle and would be less likely to have 2 vehicles. It is acknowledged that the Greenfield site is not in a town centre location, but its non-car accessibility has been identified as being good to reasonable, with the associated potential to reduce the use of the private car. A slightly greater parking provision for the Greenfield site, which is 1 space per 0.9 apartments, compared to 1 space per 1.2 apartments at the recently approved McCarthy and Stone development on Tudor Road, Abergavenny, addresses this locational issue. Taking all of this into account, it's maintained that the provision of 21 parking spaces for the 18 retirement living apartments proposed for the Greenfield site is appropriate. It is concluded that, subject to conditions to require provision of an on-site turning facility and that the site is managed in accordance with the agreed management plan, then the proposal is acceptable in regards to access and parking provision. We conclude that this is a proposal of a high standard of design and will be highly sustainable in terms of construction. It would not have an unacceptable visual impact on the area. The development would not cause any loss of amenity for local residents. Access, parking and traffic generation have also been considered and deemed to be acceptable by the Council's highway officers. We would therefore recommend approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement to secure a contribution of £107,184 towards the provision of affordable housing in the locality. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil, for a very detailed report. I should have asked in the beginning if everybody had received and read the late correspondence. I'm sure when it was sent out that you've all had ample time to do so. I believe the planning officer is now going to read out a statement. So I believe, is that you, Craig, going to do that? Right, thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning in Monmouthshire. And this is a statement from Llanfoist Community Council. Llanfoist Community Council has raised a number of detailed objections to this proposal during the relevant statutory consultation opportunities. These are documented and remain valid. This said, the Community Council would like to submit this statement to Planning Committee to reinforce its objection to this application and to add emphasis regarding the sheer scale of the development. Members of the Community Council considered it difficult to accurately appreciate the scale of the development and the impact on adjacent properties from various iterations of submitted elevation plans. On closer examination, it would appear that the scale of the development would be on a par with certain elevations of local commercial premises, such as the Premier Inn and Waitrose. Clearly, this is unacceptable in the more traditional residential area of Llanfoist. The impact is exuberated by an elevated location at the junction of the B4246 and B4269. Furthermore, LDP 8.135 states there is a need to ensure that all development is of a high quality, sustainable and inclusive design and respects and enhances its surroundings. Development of an inappropriate scale and character will not be supported. Llanfairpwll Far Community Council would strongly argue that this development will not enhance its surroundings and is clearly of an inappropriate scale for the location, i.e. among smaller residential homes. Members of Llanfairpwll Far Community Council would strongly urge refusal of this application. And that is the comments made by the Community Council Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. I believe now we have somebody else who wants to speak, and this is via video recording.
Can everybody see the video recording on the screen?
I can only see you yet, Craig.
I can.
I can see it, Craig.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
I'll now play the message, Chair.
Thank you, Craig.
Apologies, Chair. They just bear with me for 2 seconds. Apologies, Chair. Can all members see that now?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll now play the message, Chair.
My name is Paul Rennie. I've lived across Merthyr Road from Greenfields for 17 years, and 2 previous generations of my family have lived in this village, and it means a lot to me. This development is described as an active living retirement apartment complex, and you might even think it environmentally sound from the green roof, but it's none of these things. It's a luxury apartment block for the wealthy over 60s, and that's generally who the wealthy are. I believe the statutory pension age is actually rapidly rising to 68. This scheme also demonstrates no genuine commitment to sustainability, which I'll come back to. This development was originally registered for planning in December 2018 on the last working day before Christmas. The Christmas delay to notifications to neighbours reduced the period for public consultation to the absolute bare minimum before the statutory decision date. Residents complained that a large development required a public consultation, and the developer was forced to withdraw the application and undertake it. However, this was merely to reissue the proposals and a questionnaire. There was no attempt to explain the proposals or any opportunity to raise any questions. It was a bare minimum and required residents to navigate many technical documents online. The application was submitted and proposals were tweaked and revised proposals uploaded in June 2019, October 2019, February 2020 and July 2020. There was no clear explanation of what changed and no attempt to address the fundamental principle this community objected to. It's important that the committee look all the way back to objections to that original December 2018 application, as many people got tired of resubmitting objections. This alone should be enough to reject this application and request the process of consultation be undertaken meaningfully and community engagement encouraged rather than avoided. There are, however, other matters that make this development unacceptable in planning terms. Scheme is in a village bordering the national park. The landscape officer rightly points out it's out of scale. Please don't ignore their views. The scheme will result in mass excavations at great environmental cost and disruption to the community. The site already has permission for additional houses, which could be built with the topography at lower environmental cost. There is no drainage scheme. This condition. This is crucial, as we found out when a developer across the road, Merthyr Road, pumped out a load of sitting water and drained all the local ponds linked to it. The scheme drawings and the perspectives are inconsistent. The plans show great gates at the entrances, but these are omitted from the perspectives. Is this or isn't this a gated community? That would be an affront to this community, conveying a distrust and a desire for the wealthy to segregate themselves. The transport officers and planning officers completely failed to acknowledge that pedestrian and cycle routes between Llanfairpwll and Abergavenny have been made unsafe and unpleasant by traffic growth and are a total deterrent to sustainable transport, and any additional traffic is another problem. I also note that planning officers respond to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act with a short standard paragraph of dismissal. This is frankly depressing. Myself and many residents have wasted days of our life navigating unhelpful planning documents, and I'd rather give this time to working with a developer in consultation to produce a scheme that works for this community. My neighbours in their 70s and 80s also joined their site, have lived in this village for 30 to 40 plus years, have taken great care and service to the community, and it pains me to see them insulted, ignored and marginalised by developers who know little of this area and are willing to burden us with the long-term implications for their short-term profit. Most of us are happy to see development and will help enable it and make it better when the developer shows respect for the community and environment. However, this proposal goes against every principle this planning committee should uphold and must be rejected.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Is that it, Craig? Thank you very much indeed. And that was Mr. Paul Rennie. We now have a statement, audio statement, I believe, from the agent, which is Mr. Peter Sully.
Yep.
Are you reading that out, Craig?
It's an audio statement which will
right,
be
yes, thank you.
come across
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. My name is Pete Sully, Director at Asbury Planning, agent for the applicants. The proposed scheme seeks to provide high quality, sustainable residential development for older persons, 60 plus, where an element of care will be provided for residents. The proposals will result in an exemplar zero carbon design, which will ensure a highly sustainable building, thereby helping address the Council's climate emergency, which was declared last year. The scheme provides solar PV and a green roof, which will provide biodiversity, drainage and decarbonisation benefits. All car parking spaces will have electric charging points, well in excess of PPW10 requirements, therefore reducing dependence on fossil fuels. In response to concerns raised during the application, the scale and massing has been significantly reduced. The southern gable end has been stepped back by 2 metres, and the roof has been reduced at second floor level by creating a gap between the 2 wings. The tallest ridge of the roof has been reduced by 1.7 metres, meaning that the highest part of the scheme is lower than the existing dwelling and lower than the extant consent on site for 4 dwellings. The building has been repositioned 3 metres further away from Merthyr Road, thereby allowing more landscaping to soften the scheme. The extent of brickwork has also been reduced, with timber cladding included at upper levels to further soften the building. One of the main architectural features is the green roof, designed to reflect the Blorenge to the south. The roof slopes down towards the neighbouring boundary, thereby reducing its visual impact and improving the relationship to the surrounding street scene, all of which is in line with the applicant's highly sustainable agenda. A natural high quality materials palette has been selected to integrate harmoniously within the rural settlement and preserve and enhance the character and appearance of the landscape setting. This includes natural timber, light buff brick and the grass sedum roof. The inspiration for the timber was partly derived from Llanfairpwll Primary School. A substantial landscaping scheme is proposed within the site. This will include the retention of some on-site landscaping with additional native species planted throughout the site, particularly along Merthyr Road and Gypsy Lane, to further soften the scheme from the street scene. A management plan has been produced which details how the site will be managed, with particular regard to car parking. The proposals relate to high quality older persons accommodation, where an element of care will be available for the residents. Therefore, car ownership is far fewer than open market or affordable housing. 21 parking spaces are proposed on site for 18 units. Spaces are provided for carers and visitors as set out in 6.2.2 of the committee report, with spaces leased separately to residents. Therefore, those who do not own a car will not need a space. This will assist with parking management, as there will be an appropriate balance between spaces available for residents, carers and visitors. The scheme also provides a better parking ratio than the recently approved McCarthy and Stone scheme on Tudor Road. The level of car parking is therefore sufficient and, with all spaces having charging points, is highly sustainable. The Council's highways officers have raised no objections. There will also be a financial contribution of over £100,000 for affordable housing for local needs. There are no objections to the scheme from the technical consultees, and it is evident from the committee report that officers find all matters such as design, overlooking, sustainability, biodiversity, highways, landscape and green infrastructure acceptable and in accordance with the LDP. Members are therefore respectfully requested to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sully. That was very informative. I now call on the local member, please, and I believe that's County Councillor Charles Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you'll grant me some leeway in what I have to say. I've given this an awful lot of consideration, and it's been difficult, as you'll appreciate, as a local member being faced with a scheme of this size and not being able to say anything or engage with the community because of having to keep an open mind. So I'll go through my notes as quickly as I can, if that's okay. And the first thing I want to talk about is tree that's marked TN2 on some of the plans. The ecology report states that the large mature sycamore on the southwest boundary of the site provides structural diversity, so that strands of ivy, possibly concealing more significant features that might include woodpecker holes, loose bark and cavities, is considered to provide suitable, moderate roosting suitability for bats. The tree was felled earlier this year, despite it being identified for retention within the concept landscape proposals, ecology report, design and access statement, so on. I highlighted this to the case officer in July, but none of the supporting documents have been revised. The latest September versions of the site layout plan and ecological management plan still show the tree there months after removal, which raises several issues. Firstly, the written response from the Council's biodiversity officer is based on incorrect plans. Secondly, condition 12 requires a submission of evidence to demonstrate compliance with the ecological management plan, yet the plan is wrong, so it can't be complied with. And thirdly, something outside the ownership or control of the developer can't be subject to a condition, either on its own or as part of a plan, and therefore may not be relied upon as part of the scheme. The ecology plan proposes a substantial bat roost building under the canopy of the missing tree, but since the tree is no longer there, the mitigation must be reassessed. Our biodiversity officer's response states it will be necessary to ensure the retention of dark corridors around the curtilage of the site, protecting existing and new planting at the boundaries. This is to ensure the ecological functionality of the mitigation and enhancement features, particularly on the western side of the boundary. So without further comments from the applicant's ecology consultant and comments from our biodiversity officer, we can't be sure of its ecological functionality and whether the bat roost would be in the most appropriate place or provide the necessary enhancement. I sought advice from an independent ecologist with experience in planning who agrees that my interpretation is the correct one. Welsh Government has clarified that mitigation alone is not sufficient and schemes should be able to show and provide biodiversity enhancement. If not, they should be refused. On to matters of scale, character and design. And taken on its own, I like the design of the building, the choice of the materials, the green roof, the landscaping and the overall concept. And were it proposed for a location like Westgate, where the fox hunter's home has been built and the context of the site is completely different, then I would have had little objection. Sadly, this massive building is proposed to be in possibly the most prominent part of Llanfoyst village, where the surrounding character is, unsurprisingly, village-like. Around Gypsy Lane, Woodland Crescent and Merthyr Road towards Gavilan, there is nothing comparable within the street scene, where all of the existing properties comprise two-storey houses or bungalows and a village hall, all of a domestic and human scale. Of all the issues I read in objectors' correspondence and heard during a well-attended public meeting pre-pandemic, there was a sense of disbelief about how something so enormous could be considered suitable. Now, I've sent Phil some images to display, and could I ask him to show the first one, please?
Craig's just finding these here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so the first one, I've annotated the site block plan. The dashed line from north to south relates to the line of a section drawing. But first, please look at the lower part of the plan where the red arrow shows that Orchard Lee will be set back from Gypsy Lane by just over 17 metres compared with the minimal setback of the block. It's rather small, but you can just see the 72 arrows with the setback of the house. Image 2 now, please, Craig. Thank you for your patience, Chair.
Quite all right, Councillor Howard. We're all trying to get to grips with all this different technology, although I am in the chamber today, which is, but I am supported by officers at a suitable distance. So you carry on and please everyone be patient.
Thanks, Craig. The red line shows a 17-metre setback of Orchard Lee. That's the second red brick house on the left, but it's obscured by the planting. In the background, I've tried to represent in blue the location of the side elevation of the block, or the gable end as it's been called. As members will see, this side elevation will protrude well beyond the established and consistent building line set by Orchard Lee and its other neighbours to the south. The inset picture shows that new side elevation sat on top of a 4-metre high bank. In terms of position, scale and design, it would look completely at odds with the street scene. Number 3, please, Craig. Thank you. The third image is Merthyr Road facing towards Abergavenny. The application site is on the right and Landfoist cottages and the backs of houses at Briardine are on the left. The streetlight column I've highlighted on the right is 10 metres high, which helps to give an idea of the scale when the ridge height of the apartments at this point, according to their plans, will be 9.74 metres. So imagine that lamp sat on the higher ground behind the hedge and how the elevations of the apartment block would tower over everything else. In July 2019 and February of this year, I asked the case officer for a north-south cross-section to show the relationship of the apartment block with Merthyr Road and those dwellings on the opposite side. The Community Council also asked for this. The requests weren't acknowledged and no section was provided. I thought this would be essential to show the impact on the street scene and relationship of scale. 4 and 5 now, please, Craig. Right, so on to the 4th and 5th images, which are 1 to 500 and 1 to 200 sections I prepared myself. These are based on the applicant's scale drawings, measurements from GIS mapping and the datum levels of ridge heights given in the design and access statement. It's a bit rough because I used pen and a scale rule. Clearly the outlined block on the left is the length of the proposed elevation facing Gypsy Lane. Merthyr Road is in the middle, 6 metres wide, and number 11 Briardine is on the right. The little person on the opposite side of the road is 2 metres tall, which goes to show the warehouse scale of the scheme. The elevations of the apartments facing towards Merthyr Road and Gypsy Lane are 49.4 metres and 51 metres respectively. And I thought members should be aware how this compares with other large buildings they may know. And using GIS, I found that the scheme would be as wide and much longer than the Premier Inns in Abergavenny and Monmouth, as wide as, but longer and taller than County Hall, Usk, wider and longer than the Pegasus Court complex at the bottom of Abergavenny town, larger than the leisure centres in Monmouth, Caldecott and Abergavenny, larger than the Bridges Centre in Monmouth, that's the older and the newer parts, bigger than Hillston Park, bigger than Abergavenny, Aldi and Tesco, and if a bit further afield, it's a bigger footprint than the old 3-screen ABC cinema in Newport City Centre, now a travel lodge, and it's bigger than the new theatre in Cardiff. So all massive buildings of comparable size that the applicants want to build next door to a bungalow. I've come to the conclusion, therefore, that there can be no justification for supporting a development of this scale and footprint in this sensitive village location. I can't recall, either as a member of this committee or my day job as a planner, ever coming across such a scheme of such gross insensitivity in terms of its scale, mass and general appearance. The scheme would clearly contravene policy DES 1, points B, C, D, E, G and L. I now want to just talk about the extant outline consent, and Phil showed us drawing number 400p, 900p4, and that supposes to compare the existing outline consent to the new scheme. I don't know if Craig, you want to go back to that drawing, or members can recall it.
We're just going to bring it up now, Chair.
Thanks. Right, that's the one. Okay, yeah, so this supposes to compare the existing outline consent to the new scheme by demonstrating the massing of 5 dwellings, existing plus new 4. It also gives datum levels of ridge heights. The drawing appears to show the new scheme in a good, less impactful light, almost as betterment, but this is misleading for 2 reasons. Firstly, presenting the mass of the 5 dwellings as if one continuous elevation close to the site boundary is nonsense. This takes no account of perspective, intervening structures or landscaping. In reality, the dwellings will be set well in from the site boundary, and those towards the centre of the site will be much less visible than suggested, as the existing house is now. Secondly, the 2015 outline consent approved matters of layout, access and scale, and landscaping and appearance were reserved. In respect of scale, this relates solely to the parameters of the dwelling. No elevation drawings were provided and no site surveys given to show ground levels pre or post development. The 2019 application to extend this outline consent by a further 3 years was approved in November 2019, subject to section 106. However, condition 1 identifies all matters as being reserved. What this means is that the comparison drawing is a representation of a situation that doesn't actually exist. There is no extant consent which would enable that before you, and therefore no material weight should be given to it. I'm nearly at the end now, Chair. I want to make 4 further points, if I may. Firstly, the scheme represents major development in the centre of a rural settlement to which considerable representation has been received. I think it's a big mistake that the report doesn't reference the national sustainable placemaking outcomes as set out in Chapter 2 of PPW 10. In my mind, the development has not been demonstrated to be in accordance with national policy on placemaking. Number 2, some of the plans listed in the table at the top of the report include gated accesses for vehicles and pedestrians and detail a fob system for residents. These are outlined in the management plan, yet the report advises there won't be any gates. The management plan itself is also out of date in other respects. Thirdly, condition 14 appears to be unenforceable in respect of compliance with the out-of-date management plan. The condition contains no detail about how ongoing compliance will be measured and therefore whether or not a breach could be identified. And my last point, the plans presented to us are understandably designed to show the development in its best light. Surrounding houses are referenced and shown on plans where it suits the argument, such as Orchard Lee and 5 Thomas Hill Close. But this is misleading given that those 2 properties are located on higher ground anyway. Furthermore, the elevation and montage drawings present the scheme almost enveloped in a mist of trees. The first thing I ask members is, what does this tell you about the appearance and the appropriateness of the scheme, that in order to be considered acceptable, it has to be hidden? The photo montage is a good example of this. 2 very large mature trees are shown at the front of the site, and you can see that they're 15 to 20 metre height, judged against the height of these streetlights, which are 10 metres. So just how long are those going to take to grow, because they're not there now? The same principle applies to the constant row of trees alongside the Merthyr Road elevation. 8 massive 9 to 10 metre high trees within touching distance of the elevation, and their crowns immediately in front of the windows of north-facing habitable rooms. What does that say for the outlook of and amenity of future residents and the green credentials of the development if lights have to be on in the daytime because the rooms are so dark? So the last point highlights the main problem with this scheme, in that instead of going back to the drawing board or sticking with the previous consent for 4 dwellings plus the existing, the original far too large proposal has been tweaked and fiddled with to try and make a still too large development acceptable, a kind of papering over the cracks. This is the 4th iteration of the same basic proposal, and now we have the planning equivalent of trying to hide an elephant behind a napkin. So to conclude, the ecological plans and supporting information are obsolete, so biodiversity mitigation and enhancements cannot be guaranteed to be in accordance with national and local policy, contrary to policies S13 and NE1. Condition 12 is unenforceable because it represents a situation that no longer exists. Condition 14 is imprecise and also unenforceable. The scale, mass and appearance and design of the proposal is contrary to LDP policy DES 1. And fourthly, no consideration appears to have been given to the national sustainable placemaking outcomes. In light of this, the proposal appears to be in conflict with national and local planning policy, and I'd like to move a reason for refusal, please, Chair. Okay, and the reason I've drafted, I'll go slowly for Richard's benefit for the minutes. By virtue of its massing, excessive scale, design and prominent position, the proposed development would be detrimental to the appearance of the site and surrounding street scene, and would therefore result in an insensitive, intrusive and alien building which would fail to respect and assimilate with the form, scale, siting and materials of its setting. In addition, the proposed scheme would be harmful to the outlook and privacy of neighbouring occupiers in an area characterised by high standards of privacy and lower density of development, and would restrict long views towards the Blaenavon World Heritage Site. Furthermore, the proposed development is unable to demonstrate positive biodiversity mitigation or enhancement and protection of species of importance. Consequently, the development would not be in accordance with policies NE1, S13 and DES 1, B, C, D, E, G and L of the Monmouthshire Local Development Plan. And thank you for your patience, members and Chair. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Howard. You've obviously put in an awful lot of time and energy, certainly into your report there. It's way beyond what most of our planning committee and myself would have ever done. So I do applaud in the time that you've spent, and obviously you felt very, very keen on putting your point of view across so that we could all understand it. Anyway, thank you very much, Councillor Howard. I now call on any other members who wish to comment on this application, please.
Chair, I have raised my hand in the chat bar.
Thank you very much. I haven't yet got a chat bar to put up. Thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. I will take yours now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to second Councillor Howard's proposal that the application is refused, because my ward is an adjoining ward in Groford in Abergavenny, and I've studied this very, very carefully, and I agree with the points that he has raised. But I've also got very serious concerns about the car parking situation. Only 6 spaces for residents. There are going to be 18 retirement apartments there, proposed to be there, 16 2-bed and 2 1-bed. The fact that residents would not be allowed to park on site more than 6, 60 years of age is a proposed age. To me, sorry, but that's not old, not really an age where most people would give up their cars. I know we want to get more people off the road, but at a time when more people are not particularly comfortable with public transport, let's hope that doesn't continue for too long and that we get some normality back. But I just feel that to restrict the parking for residents to 6 on a permit basis, that simply wouldn't be sufficient for an area which it was compared with the McCartney Stone development in Abergavenny, which is actually in my ward. That is in the middle of a town, and that has got a lot of amenities surrounding it. And I don't think you can look at this in quite the same light as the people there who will not, they don't have cars, a lot of them, admittedly, but that's because they are in a town where things are very, very convenient. There is a public transport link to Glenfoist, I recognise, but I do not compare these two sites at all. So thank you very much. My points.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Woodhouse. I believe Councillor Brown is next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to endorse the points made by Councillor Howard and also by Councillor Woodhouse. I mean, my concern is that it's obvious that this building is out of context to the street scene in terms of its mass and scale, and the building line isn't even in line either. And I'm also concerned about the parking because effectively 18 flats, 6 parking spaces is about a third of a space each. You know, I mean, I know that it won't be a third of a space, but that's equivalent to it, and it would be a first come first served basis. But I think that you know, it's only for over 60s, and my own mother is 92, and she still has a parking space that she needs in flats that have got a warden who comes in the morning. So I don't think actually the parking is sufficient to deal with it. But also the main points are the highways issue and the development of the McCarthy and Stone isn't comparable because that was the police station, old site, which is in the very centre of Abergavenny, and so whereas it's already been stated that this is an out of town location, so people will still need the cars in terms of the age that they're talking about. So you know, I support the comments already made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. I believe we now have Councillor Clark, please. Councillor Clark.
Oops. Yep. Thank you, Chairman. Like the previous 2 speakers, I can't understand why there are only 6 parking spaces for the 18 units. People of 60 are still driving, and many of them would expect to drive for 20 or 30 years beyond their 60th birthdays. So it really 6 is just not enough. Plot 9 is not 2.8 metres underneath. It's actually only 2.5 metres and therefore is actually inaccessible. So in fairness, although they're counting 21 units, there are only 20 units that you could actually park a car in. Having said that, because the 9 parking spaces beneath the building have 300mm wide columns at their entrance, unless the cars are like minis or less, it will leave only 6 inches on either side of the vehicle when you come out between the columns. And I doubt whether there's any member of this planning committee who could squeeze through 6 inches to access their car park space. So that's totally impractical. So in fairness, we haven't got 21 car parking spaces that most people could use. We've only got 8. So that needs to be looked at. Sorry, not 8, 9 from 21 is 12. The other thing which is really intriguing, and several people have mentioned it this afternoon about McCarthy and Stone. If I was to buy a McCarthy and Stone flat in Abergavenny or anywhere else in the United Kingdom, I would be able to access that unit as an old person in an internal connection corridor. These are not that way. These are connected by balcony. So if you lived in flat 1, and you wanted to go to have coffee in flat 4, you have to go outside in the middle of the winter, put on your coat, put on your shoes, put on your gloves in order to go and access one of the other units. They're totally impractical. People, when they retire, don't want to take to the elements to go and have a recreation with their fellow colleagues. So on that ground alone, I find it unacceptable. I must congratulate Giles. I thought that was an amazing presentation, probably the best we've ever heard from a planning member in Monmouthshire for the last 20 odd years. And I congratulate him because it was clear, it was precise and easily understood. And I am also for refusal of this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark, and I couldn't agree more than you with Councillor Howard's presentation as a local member. There's obviously concerns in his locality. And also when you say about the parking, I mean, some of them, I don't know if they said about any disabled parking, because even if they're disabled, they could still drive a car. So that hasn't been raised either. Councillor Murphy, I believe you're the next that wish to speak. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And in all of the responses to the application we've had so far, there's been a lot of points made which are critical of the process and possibly of the officers' view that they've taken. Are we going to give the well, Craig has just come in, so I think he's about to do what I'm about to say. Can we have the officers' responses to that? I'm starting to lean towards the fact that I think this one needs to go back for a re-examination, and I think at the very least we should defer it. There seems to be an awful lot of questions that really need answering before we could make any sort of safe decision on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I couldn't agree more, because it does seem to me more questions than answers at the moment. Councillor Matthew Feakin next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hear very clearly what the committee is saying. For me, I think that we should acknowledge that the scheme coming forward as it is at the moment has obviously gone through a leg of work to deliver the scheme that's in front of us. And there are some good points to the scheme, you know, the green roof and the timber cladding, etc. There's some really good attributes to the scheme. But for me, it's all about the scale, and it's very easy to look at it set against the Blorange and say that it sits within the landscape. The Blorange is a very, very big bit of land, and so to put anything against the Blorange and says it looks proportional is slightly misrepresented, maybe. But for me, it's about scale. I would like us to, as Phil suggested, put it back to see if something could be looked at and considered in that regard. There's been a lot of work to bring it this far, and rather than just sort of turn it down immediately, I would be more inclined to ask for it to go back and come back with some more tweaking to the scheme. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Feakin. I now have Councillor Alan Davis next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Howard as well on his presentation, which I thought was excellent. And somebody who doesn't have the technical knowledge that he does, it highlighted a lot of issues, I think. But the main issue for me is this an appropriate development in this location? If we forget the other things like parking, I think the scale of what is being proposed is not appropriate for the location. And I would support Councillor Howard's proposal to reject the application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Alan Davis. Now, I believe Craig wishes to come back now. Please, Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to come in and clear some of the points and just explain the rationale in terms of how we've got to where we are in terms of recommending approval for the application. There's been a number of things there raised by Councillor Howard, which obviously some of those elements would certainly need to be looked into, and certainly with regards to the tree. And he is correct, yes, we certainly need to look for enhancements with regards to biodiversity. And that is something that we would need to look at. But I think in terms of determination of this application today, it'd be really good to get an idea from members in terms of the scale and design of the development that's in front of them, to see whether there is a way that we could support that. Obviously, officers are recommending approval of this application. It's been for a rigorous design process in terms of the amount of amendments that have been made to the scheme to ensure the mass and the scaling of that building has been brought down. In terms of the energy efficiency and the sustainability of this building. It is a very high standard. You heard that Asbury development planning consultants have outlined that it's a zero carbon. It has got a green roof. There are some really high credentials of this development, and when you look at the size of the plot, this is much more of efficient use of the scheme in terms of the scheme that we had before us, which was only for 5 houses. This would generate a number of houses on a very large plot, which, if you look at the layout, there's a lot of green infrastructure on the site. There's a lot of that communal space in terms of the well-being of the future residents and the functionality of how that would work. It is considered to be of a high standard. In terms of the scale and massing, and I do appreciate the comments that Councillor Howard has made with regards to this element. This is something that we have debated internally, and we've worked with our urban designer to ensure that the mass has been brought down. It is worth noting there is a 23-metre intervening distance on that road. It is a prominent location. It would be a primary focal building as you entered into Lampoist off that roundabout, but it is a corner plot, and this would enhance it in officers' view. And this is part of placemaking in terms of how do we want Monmouthshire to look in 10 years' time? Do we want it to be 2-storey pitch roofs dwellings along that side, or do we want to have something which is a bit more innovative, a bit more sustainably, a bit more functionality about it? Which is an interesting focal point. It enhances the area, and I think that's certainly what we were looking at supporting and providing for that community. There are a number of other comments with regards to the parking and the lack of parking at the site. In terms of the way Planning Policy Wales is going and the transport hierarchy, it is very much based on moving into public transport and active travel links. Lampoist is clearly connected to Abergavenny and that wider area, and there are those links there. That's why there has been this argument with regards to sustainability, and that is heavily supported within Planning Policy Wales. So I think going forward, we do need to take a view on our sustainable settlements and how sustainable they are in terms of transport movements, and relying less on the car. So in terms of the comments from members, I do appreciate this is a different type of building, it's a different offering, but officers have considered this at length, and given the placemaking agenda, it is considered to be an appropriate form of development. So if members are minded to take a different recommendation on that, we can obviously speak to the developers and given some of what the councillors have said. However, I think it would be wise to get a decision on terms of the scale and the overall design of the development, if we can get a view from that on members if it is going to be deferred. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'm just wondering now if nobody else wishes to speak, and Councillor Howard has moved to refuse it, and he had a seconder for it, but there are a couple now who want to defer it to liaise again with a developer. So instead of using quite a blunt instrument, I will take advice now from Councillor Howard as a local member, which way he would rather it goes now. Councillor Howard?
Thank you, Chair. That's kind of you. I hear what Craig says about how do we want our communities to look in the future. Do we want them all to have twin pitch roofs, 2-storey and what have you? I mean, I think the context of this site is the key thing for me, and I think those are the sort of arguments we need to have as part of an LDP process, not try and generate by one extremely large planning application. Secondly, talk of tweaking the proposal. Can it be improved? Well, as I mentioned in my comments, this is the 4th iteration of the proposal. It's been tweaked, fiddled and faffed with. It does in a sense represent betterment, but to me, because the scale is so massive, it's almost like asking somebody whether they'd rather be shot or stabbed, because neither are acceptable to me. The scheme is way too big for that site. The building is absolutely enormous, and hence the plans are great in how they show it in its setting, and they do the application some service, but on its own it may be fine, but it's all about the setting and the context and the street scene for me. And I'm really grateful for members' comments, because I think they've picked up on that, and it's a pity we're not able to have a site meeting at the moment so we can actually go out and have a look and say, well, yeah, there's that 10-metre lamppost. That's what you'd have, a massive elevation alongside Merthyr Road, and particularly Gypsy Lane where it's 3 metres. I don't think this scheme is of a nature or a scale where it could be tweaked to meet either my views or the majority of the members I've heard speak. So, to be honest, Chair, the applicant has a right of appeal. This has to come back to next committee anyway. If it's refused, the applicant has a right of appeal, which she may wish to exercise. And I think we need to make a clear statement. This just isn't acceptable because of the sheer scale of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Howard. I appreciate your comments, and I dare say, as you move first for refusal, I think that will be the vote I shall have to take first. Although I should think I need to have a seconder. I believe we had a seconder as well.
Yeah, it was seconded by Councillor Woodhouse.
Councillor Woodhouse seconded, that's correct. So could you please all go to the chat bar and make your vote for refusal, if you're in line with that, with what has been moved and seconded. Please make sure that you're reading the vote properly, which is for refusal or against refusal.
We've had 10 responses and there are 15 councillors present, so
Madam
I'll
Chair,
keep a minute or two going.
The chat bar isn't coming up in my computer. Can I vote by hand or whatever? I haven't the facility to vote.
Right.
No.
Have you looked at the bottom of the screen?
Yes, yes, like I normally do, yes.
And it's not coming up in the, you've got no chat bar, Councillor Webb.
I have a chat. I have a chat bar, but no voting facility.
And I'm the same, Chairman.
Have you tried scrolling?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do know how to do this. Thank you.
Or sometimes it doesn't always come up and down.
Madam Chairman, I haven't got either my image, but perhaps that's a good thing. But I haven't got an image and I haven't got the ability to vote.
Did that? It is.
I'm asking the officers now, is there any assistance that could be offered, please? Is John available, please?
I think, I mean, we've now got 12 responses. There are 10 for refusal, 2 against refusal and no abstention. So it looks like there's maybe 3 councillors who aren't able to vote, but even if they were all to vote against refusal, it would still be a very clear vote for refusal. So I think that we can take that motion as having passed. So that that's been
I'm not
refused.
happy with this, though, to be honest with you. I think we should all have the opportunity to vote. But there we are, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
I think it's agreed that that is what we would do. I believe in this circumstance, if the majority of the members that are there and have voted, it will be carried. Thank you. So do you wish to state that again, please, Denzel, as to what the decision is, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we've had 12 responses, 10 for refusal, 2 against refusal, and none have abstained. There are 3 councillors who've been unable to vote, but it's a clear vote for refusal in any event.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Denzel. So that has been refused, that application. They obviously would go to appeal anyway, as Councillor Howard said. We now move on to the next application of the afternoon. And this one is, make sure that my microphone is unmuted. This is application Inland Forest again, and it's 02012. Thank you. Is this you, Amy? If you could please say who you are first, those that are watching. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name's Amy Longford. I'm the Heritage and Area Applications Manager. So we're staying in Inland Forest just for the moment. This application is DM 2020 02012, and it's the proposed development of 24 extra care units, including access, car parking, landscape, boundary treatments and means of enclosure at land to the south of Brewers Fayre restaurant in Llanfoist. So the site is located to the south of the main road, the A465, as you can see on the location plan there, behind the Premier Inn and the adjacent existing Fox Hunter nursing home. The site is 0.7 hectares of flat land and forms part of the strategic employment site SAE1D. The proposals are submitted by Fox Hunter Estates, who run the adjacent site and existing care home. The application seeks permission for 24 units as shown in the slide and arranged around 2 separate courtyards fronting the access road. Just spin on to the next one, thank you. So that shows the site, the red line is the extent of the site boundary and the existing Fox Hunter care home there on the side. Next one, please. So as mentioned, the site is part of the strategic employment site 1D Westgate Business Park in Llanfoist. It's allocated as part of the local development plan. Policy SAE1 states that allocated employment sites should be used for specific employment uses, B1, B2 and B8. As part of the officer report, policy E1 specifically excludes non-B uses unless specific criteria are met. The full details of these criteria are set out into the officer's report. However, the evidence supplied from the consultees suggests that although there are compatible uses already on site, there is still a demand for the site and as it was originally intended. It's acknowledged that other non-Class B uses have been accepted on the strategic site. However, this application should be considered on its own merits. In addition to the introduction of Planning Policy Wales Edition 10, has reinforced the need for decisions to be made in line with the local development plan. In relation to Planning Policy Wales, specifically paragraph 4.217 in relation to housing sites, states that sites and allocations which are no longer likely to be needed for office, industrial or retail purposes may be appropriate for housing. The de-allocation of underutilised and underperforming sites must be considered through the development plan process and could make a contribution to housing supply if it could be demonstrated that they are deliverable for housing. It goes further and states that the reallocation of these sites then need to be considered through the revised LDP and not by a case-by-case basis. In addition, paragraph 5.4.16 in relation to economic development also refers to this point. Wherever possible, planning authorities should encourage and support developments which generate economic prosperity and regeneration. Sites identified for employment use in a development plan should be protected from inappropriate development. So this seeks the protection of the employment land from alternative uses. There are 24 units proposed here, which are specifically for the over 55s, which, as per the officer report, identifies specifically why the proposals are considered to fall in the C2 category as having support for the existing Fairhoaks nursing home and as the nursing home manager, and there will be restrictions for sale through the 106. The proposals are designed to be complementary to the existing nursing home development adjacent. The supporting information also states that one full-time employee will be created as the site manager with 1 unit dedicated to them. A further approximately 19 jobs could be created through the supply chain for care services on the site. So the site plan in front of you shows the proposed layout of the development and its context in relation to the surrounding uses. And then the detailed layout of the site. If we can just move to the next slide, please. This shows 2 groups of buildings around 2 smaller green spaces and a row of units to the south of the access road. The site plan there shows all the green infrastructure incorporated within the site, specifically on the northern boundary. We can move on to the next one, please. So there's also a green link to the south of the site, joining the main road to the west and the lagoon to the east. This is outside the application site. However, it forms the context and shows how the site fits in with the adjacent land uses. The green link is also a requirement of the 106 attached to the outline consent for the wider site. The details as submitted here shows that it has been considered in light of the proposed development when considering the southern edge of the site. And it is noted now that all the issues with licenses have overcome, and this is being pursued independently. Just to note, the pink line separating the green link and the proposed development site is a gas main. Can move on to the next one, please. So the units are proposed to be a range of 1, 2 and 3 bed units consisting 16 bungalows and 4 two-storey units. The slide shows and small. Sorry, I was going to say, can you still hear me? The smaller 1-bedroom units are semi-detached with gabled porches, as you can see here in the slide. The next 2 slides show 2 semi-detached units, which are slightly offset from each other to break up the longer elevations. These incorporate 2 bedrooms. All of the buildings are proposed to use render and cladding finishes with grey slate roofs. The materials design are considered to be appropriate within the context of the site and the adjacent buildings. So the last slide there shows the elevations of the dorm bungalow, which there are 2 of these proposed on the site. So the next group of slides show the proposed development in 3D. Here we go. The first looking from the northeast and the second from the southwest. You can see that the 2 groups of units are set around green central spaces, one with a smaller pond. The boundary treatments again have been proposed to create a secure and integrated with the soft landscaping to enhance their appearance. So, sorry, can we go back a little bit? Sorry. Again. That's great, thank you. So this second slide then is looking from the opposite direction. We go back one, sorry. That's it there. So that shows the area, oh, forward one, the one with the green area to the bottom to the south, which will connect, shows that link which will connect the main road with the lagoon. So these then are slides of the central green communal areas. So they're designed to be share spaces with all the units fronting onto these spaces. So the last 2 photographs show the current condition of the site and the adjacent developments. So this is showing the new housing to the south of west and the hills beyond towards the edge of the World Heritage Site. The second shows a southern view with the existing Fox Hunter nursing home. And then the last photograph shows towards the current access and the roundabout. To conclude, the application in principle is contrary to the Local Development Plan and Planning Policy Wales. The site is allocated for employment use within the B1, B2 and B8 use classes. Despite the changing environment in relation to COVID, the authority's business manager has stated that there is still a demand, especially in Abergavenny, for this type of employment space. All other material considerations are considered to be acceptable and can be managed via conditions. For example, in relation to design, highways, sustainability and amenity. It is recommended that although the use and the scale of the development shown is acceptable, the principle of the development contradicts the local development plan and therefore the officer's recommendation is to refuse in line with Planning Policy Wales. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Then that's another detailed observation for the officers to put through. I don't yes, we do have someone who wishes to speak, I believe. I believe we have a Matthew Gray doing an audio recording, please.
Yes, I got that up for you now, Chair.
Thank you, Craig.
I would like to thank committee on behalf of the applicant for the opportunity to address you in relation to the application proposing the development of 24 extra care units at land adjacent to Fox Hunter's care home Plan Voiced. I hope members are well during these difficult times and would like to thank officers for their hard work during the COVID period. It's acknowledged that the application before committee today has been recommended for refusal, solely linked to an objection from the policy department. Notwithstanding, I hope that members are able to appreciate the significant benefits the proposed development will result in, which include the the provision of 24 extra care units to be occupied by over 55s, for which research has identified there is a critical need for in the Monmouthshire area. The creation of 20 new jobs directly linked to the proposal with significant further benefits for the supply chain. The expansion of the operation of Fox Hunters Care Home, an award-winning facility at a national level, and a scheme which the residents of Llanfoist have expressed overwhelming support in favour of, both during a public consultation event in November 2019 and as evidenced by the significant number of letters of support which have been lodged for the application. The recommendation for refusal is made solely on the grounds of non-compliance with the allocation of the site for the purposes of Class B uses in the Council's local plan. All other matters have been responded to positively by statutory consultees. Members will be aware that at the point of adoption of the local plan in 2014, the wider Westgate site was comprehensively allocated for Class B purposes. Notwithstanding, the officer's report recognises that there has been a material change in circumstances in respect of the format and use class of each approved development at the wider Westgate site. Consents on neighbouring sites have allowed for a hotel, 2 drive-throughs, a pub restaurant and a care home, none of which will be classified as Class B use in accordance with the use classes order or in accordance with the wider allocation of the site. In respect of potential uses of the site in accordance with its allocation, the comments from the policy department in the officer's report before members today acknowledges, quote, an industrial use may no longer be suitable in terms of likely noise, working hours, traffic mix and associated movements of HGVs. The COVID-19 health crisis has had a direct impact upon the property market in respect of the occupation of Class B floor space and planned construction projects. The Bank of England has predicted that the UK could face its deepest recession in over 200 years. It's therefore respectfully suggested that the proposed use of the site for the purposes of 24 extra care units, owned and operated by the owners of the adjacent Fox Hunters Care Home, represents a logical and sensible use of the site. The proposed development will complement the existing care home in addition to providing high quality bungalow accommodation for those over 55s. The final matter I would like to bring to the attention of members is the critical need for additional extra care accommodation within Monmouthshire. Research undertaken by Carterwood, the standard bearers for such investigations at a national level, has identified a substantial unmet need and major shortfall for extra care units within Monmouthshire. To provide a level of context, the research has identified a shortfall in supply of 397 units, which is only likely to increase as time goes on. While the proposed development will not comprehensively satisfy this requirement, it will make a vital contribution to the provision of such accommodation within Monmouthshire. To refuse the application would represent a significant missed opportunity to the detriment of local residents, prospective tenants of the accommodation, and send a negative signal to operators who may seek to develop similar accommodation on alternative sites within the council area. I therefore respectfully request that members approve the application before them today and look forward to the debate.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gray. We appreciate you taking the time to address the committee. I believe we will return now to the local member, which is Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies, it's me again, and I'll be a lot briefer this time. I'm fed up of hearing my own voice as well. So I'm going to restrict my comments to the reason for refusal, since in all other respects, the report considers the development acceptable. In this case, the land to which policy E1 applies is an area between the A465 to the northeast, the Persimmon housing development to the southwest, the waste transfer site to the southeast, and Westgate Yard to the northwest. The vast majority of this land parcel has been developed for non-B class uses, all granted by committee on the basis of officer recommendations for approval. These include, as the agent said, Brewers Fayre, Premier Inn, Costa Coffee, McDonald's and the Fox Hunters Care Home. A minor part of this land is left. The December 2016 committee report for the Fox Hunters application states, a marketing report is submitted as part of the application package. It highlights that very few inquiries have been received for companies looking for B1, B2 or B8 accommodation in the site. General inquiries have included car sales, not national dealerships. Given the complex nature of developing the land at Westgate, it's been extremely difficult to provide accurate timescales for development options, which is now only becoming clearer as the infrastructure works reach an advanced stage. It also states that Westgate has been a very expensive site to develop, and any development appraisal for a B1, 2 or B8 scheme will be likely to demonstrate the capital or rental level required to make a scheme viable. And that will be considerably higher than current market rates, and it would not therefore be possible to compete with existing properties or even development sites within the region. A shorter paragraph then in that report says it is considered clear that the loss of the site from its employment brackets business use allocation will have a limited material effect on the supply or availability of quality sites in Landfoist/Abergavenny, and a negligible impact when considering Monmouthshire as a whole. So what's changed? And I doubt, given the economic position we're in now, and the agent referenced that this situation has improved to the point where those considerations of 2016 are now not valid. So looking at the land now proposed to be retained for employment purposes, I wonder how useful it will actually be. By the time parts been reserved for employee and visitor parking, circulation space for deliveries and HGVs, any external waste storage, there won't actually be that much space left to construct any units in. And I also think that the site wouldn't be very attractive for potential B-class users, as it's now constrained and offers little flexibility or opportunity for expansion. The sensitivity of the surrounding residential land uses is a large factor, and where limits on operating times and the potential for noise and pollution complaints could arise. I believe that the employment land ship has now sailed, and that policy E1 is of little material weight, and with particular reference to point A, the site or premises is no longer suitable or well located for employment use, and point D, there will be substantial amenity benefits in allowing alternative forms of development at the site or premises, i.e. the 24 care units. No B-class use has come forward for the site, which would also suggest that point C of the policy is met, whilst the 2016 report, and that's submitted with this application, advises that point B is satisfied. So, Madam Chair, I hate to recommend against that of the officer, but I'd like to move approval.
Very much, Councillor Howard, and again, you obviously know the area well also, and the history of it. So I will now take questions and comments from the committees, and I believe the first one of the committee is for Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I don't like going against policy or officer approval either, but this has to be a better use of the land than the various B uses. COVID has altered the whole situation with regards to that type of development. We really don't know how things are going to progress, but what is absolutely clear is that decisions made on the basis of what applied some time ago when we did the LDP certainly aren't likely to be continuing now. We also have an elderly population which is getting older by the day, and we need to be looking for accommodation for them. So like Councillor Howard, I feel that I will go against policy, and I'll support the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. We all get older if we're lucky. It's just the problem is what comes with it. The next member who wishes to speak is Councillor Powell, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I too don't like going against the officer's decisions, but this has been many years since this has been there for employment and business use. And where have they been till now? The businesses that might want to put their use it. Nobody's come in the last few years, so obviously it isn't desperately needed. And at the time, there was none of this other development there. There was no fox hunters, there was no the persimmon houses behind, and there was no Brewers Fair or the hotel. So then it looked ideal. It was an open space. It would have been great to put employment onto. And if there is worry about that, I believe that in the next LDP, hopefully there'll be some employment ground to, I'm not very good with my north and south, but the opposite side of the railway and the opposite side of the A465 to Hereford, there, along that area there, I believe there'll be some space there. So I really do feel that this would be better to have these bungalows. And there's another way of looking at it too. when people get old and they feel they can't go on the house they're in, and they move into something like those bungalows, it does open up that there's a house there on the market for other younger people with families and such like to go and buy and go into. So it has two attributes to it. So I too would like to support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. The next member who wishes to speak is Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think there is a national demand for bungalows, and I think often people who wish to retire do want to have a bungalow rather than a house, and obviously a smaller accommodation. Obviously, the uses here are B1 and B2, I believe. B1 is office accommodation and B2 is light industrial use. Now, when we looked at the pictures, the context of it is it's very close to housing already, and the site itself has had different uses on it in any event. And in terms of office accommodation, obviously as a result of COVID, a number of people are working at home and meetings can be conducted via Teams. So obviously the office space isn't necessarily needed quite as much. And I would like to see, town centres used more for office accommodation and flats above shops and so forth. And I think that's probably a good location for B1 use. So I think this scheme looks very acceptable in terms of how it's laid out and everything else about it. I wouldn't normally go against any policy whatsoever, but I think that this one is, because all the surrounding areas have changed in terms of usage in any event, and I think in terms of employment use, perhaps we need to look more, as I say, towards possibly town centres for office accommodation for vacant shops. And so I think on the whole, I think that although the officer's recommendation is for refusal, the scheme to me looks and in terms of design looks very acceptable. And I think in terms of employment, there is actually going to be employment with this, because there'll be the care workers, and I think it was suggested that there will be 20 care workers. So it depends how wide or narrow an interpretation you've got of employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I believe next who wishes to speak is Councillor Roger Harris, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the poor old officers are certainly getting battering this afternoon. And when I first looked at this, I thought, this is in the LDP employment site, and we really are, we have driven a coach and horses through this site. But nevertheless, what we put there has provided employment, and I'm not quite sure where the employment of 20 people comes from. I've heard it mentioned, but I only read the employment for one person, but that's a slight consideration as far as I'm concerned. As I say, I'm concerned that we're looking as if we're going to go against officer recommendations, and I think if we do, it's vitally important that we remember this when we're addressing our replacement LDP, and certainly I think if we don't do something about looking for employment, the inspector will come down on us like a ton of bricks. But nevertheless, looking at the site, its position against everything else around it, the actual high quality of the buildings that are going to be put on there, it will be a very nice addition to what we have in the area. But I also find it's very interesting that we're
all pleading for the fact that we've not got enough of this sort of accommodation, and a few hundred yards up the road we just turned down something very similar. We're a bit schizophrenic at times, aren't we? So anyway, as I say, reluctantly, I have to agree that we need to go against the officer's advice this time, and as I say, I hope we forcibly remember that when we're considering employment sites in the replacement LDP. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you indeed, Councillor Harris. I believe Craig wishes to speak next, otherwise do you want me to take the members?
Just for Madam Chair, if I could just come in there just to sort of explain the rationale really behind the recommendation. I appreciate the comments that members have made in terms of the land allocation in the LDP and the benefits this does in terms of our ageing population and providing that accommodation, that bungalow accommodation, which is crucial across Monmouthshire. Just wanted to outline in terms of the local development plan process that obviously we allocate land for different types of uses, and when we look at the local development plan, it's not just about housing, it's also about creating jobs as well, and we have to maintain that land use in the longer term to ensure that creation of jobs can happen. This proposal just doesn't provide that level of jobs which would be considered acceptable really in terms of the local development plan and that land allocation that we've put together. There is demand for small units within Abergavenny. The business insight manager has provided comments on this planning application outlining there is demand, and I do get queries with regards to development on greenfield sites. So trying to preserve the land allocations that we do have is quite critical to ensure that we do create sustainable settlements with job opportunities as well, and that's the rationale behind ensuring that we stick to this policy and officer's recommendation to preserve this land for that use, because we do have to create sustainable settlements with that job creation. But I do appreciate the comments that the members have made in terms of the history of this overall site, but just wanted to outline for you, Chair, and the members, the rationale behind the decision. And going forward within the next replacement local development plan, if we don't retain these land uses, it's likely that we would have to find other greenfield sites for this to go on, because unfortunately we don't have those brownfield sites anymore. So that is something that you members do need to be aware of, that going forward we might need to allocate more land for this type of uses if we can preserve what we do have. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig, for that explanation. But we do wonder, none of us have got a crystal ball to see where we are going, what businesses will perhaps go to the wall and other sites become available that way. But obviously, none of us like to go against any officer's recommendation and their rationale of the as to the recommendation that they give us. But we are dealing with what's in front of us today. And the next one wishing to speak as a member is Councillor Sheila Woodhouse, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, this borders my ward. I'm an adjoining ward, and I know the site very well. I've looked at it very carefully, and yes, unfortunately, I think we have to go against planning policy on this instance. I appreciate the officers have a difficult decision to make themselves when they put these reports together, but to me, there are units available in Abergavenny, there are units available, industrial units available in nearby authorities, and I just feel very much that this would enhance this site. It would be a great asset now to have this accommodation there, and I hope that we will have further employment sites available with the new LDP. It just proves that really it does need to be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Woodhouse. Anyone else wishes to speak? I believe we will go to the vote. I believe you wish to move approval for this against recommendation. Councillor Howard, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And do you have a seconder, please?
I'll second it. Ruth.
Councillor Powell has seconded that. Thank you very much indeed. So are there anybody against? No one? I mean, when I'm saying against, I'm saying against the application, not against the approval. Is it in the chat bar now for voting, please? I hope you all have it now in the chat bar. I've got it, so I'm presuming that you all have it.
Sorry, Chair, so we've had 10 responses. Are there any councillors who haven't been able to access the vote in the chat bar?
Yes, sorry, Chairman, me again, but I'm for approval of this application, if that could be recorded. Thank you so much.
Okay,
thank you, Councillor Webb.
So including Councillor Webb's declaration there, we've now had 11 responses out of the 15 councillors present. All are for approval. So even if the remaining 4 were to vote against or abstain, it would still be a clear motion to approve. So I'm happy to say that that motion has been approved.
Thank you very much, Dan. So everybody's clear on that. That has been for approval, although it's against the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Yes, and also, as I've just been informed by Phil, that will come back for the reasons again at the next planning committee meeting. Thank you. Thank you for that, Phil. We now go to the last application of the day. And this is in Crick, and this is 00883. This has come back again from the last planning committee, and I believe Craig is carrying out the information on this. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this application is DM 2020-00883. This is land adjacent to Sunnybank on the A48 in Crichton Park Wall roundabout. This application was the subject of debate on the 1st of September 2020, where members took a split decision regarding the proposals to vary condition 3 and remove condition 4 of the previous planning consent, DM 2019-01480. In that meeting, the planning committee resolved to refuse the removal of condition number 4 in accordance with the recommendation of planning officers, and to reword the condition accordingly as outlined in the report below. This element of the application has been determined. So the only element in front of us today is the variation of condition number 3 to enable up to 4 touring caravans to be parked at the site. This was deferred from the planning committee last month for the applicant to show evidence that the 4 touring caravans can manoeuvre within the site and can be parked safely in terms of the highway safety. If I'll just talk you through the photographs which are on the screen, this is the access to the site with a track which is approximately about 8 meters wide, and there's the gates and the boundary wall to the site. Phil, if you'd like to go to the next photo. Apologies, it seems we're having a bit of a technical difficulty there. If you unshare it, Phil, and share it again.
Crikey, I've never seen so many people. Can you hear me, Ruth?
Yes, I can. That's why you notice me smiling.
Well, that's the first time you've been able to hear me, Ruth. I've been the silent partner in this. Could
you kindly turn your microphone off, Councillor Debbie? It's causing big echoes here.
Shall I continue, Madam Chair? Okay, if you'd like to go to the next photograph, so this shows the access to the site. This area shows the turning area, which is approximately 14.65 metres by 16.7 metres. This is further photographs within the site. To the right is where the 3-bed unit would go, alongside the amenity block, which has been constructed to the far end of the site. Okay, there's more photos within the site. This is the top area behind the secondary fence. This is the amenity area between the two fences, which we'll come to and I'll show you on the block plan, but this is another area which is approximately 10 metres by 28 metres. Again, here you can see the layout of the site regarding the amenity area and the grass at the bottom, turning area, and to the lower part of the photograph, which is for the site. This is the turning area. So the turning area with a truck currently parked within that turning area. Again, this just shows the scale of that turning square. Again, looking down from the access. This is from the access point. To continue, Phil. Again, this is the location plan with the site outlined in red. Plans which were previously approved with regards to the 3-bed unit and the 2-bed unit to be used for the family. And this is the amended plan which has been presented to members, which from the deferral from last month, to evidence that the site can accommodate up to 4 touring caravans, which is now the subject of this application. As you can see, there's the turning area there to the left hand side by the gate is 16.7 by 14.65. And then we have the utility, shower, day room, 2-bed unit and a 3-bed unit at the top. There's also an 18 metre by 24 metre area to the top of the site. Let's go to the next slide, Phil. This plan shows the tracking for a refuse vehicle. These were the measurements that could be established. There weren't any direct ones for touring caravans, but this does show that the refuse vehicle can move in and out of the site, so it's comparable to a car towing a touring caravan. It is worth noting that touring caravans are usually manoeuvred by their axle, so they don't need to be towed on the back of the car. They can actually be towed on an axle manually. So in terms of being able to be moved in that space, that 14.65 by 16.7, there is significant amount of space there for that to be able to be done and for the caravans to be manoeuvred at the site. This plan also shows that the 4 touring caravans at the top of the site, so you can see there's plenty of space for them there within the site, and there's plenty of space remaining in terms of amenity area. The plan also shows the parking spaces that could be potentially put in place, so you can see them within the X areas. So this plan does show and demonstrate that the site can take up to 4 touring caravans. It is also worth noting that these caravans would be used for auxiliary living accommodation and for storage of those caravans. It's highly unlikely that they'd be manoeuvring from the sites on a day-by-day basis. They'd be more static than that. And again, they would only be used in conjunction with the condition associated with number 4 in relation to the family which are utilising this site, and it would be therefore their home. There were significant concerns raised, well, not significant, well, there were concerns raised with regards to highway safety with caravans entering and exiting the site. Highways officers have refused to review the information that have been put in front of them, and they have no objection to the proposed development. And my colleague Mark Davies is here today to answer any queries with regards to concerns on highway safety, but there are no concerns in relation to that matter. The site can manoeuvre touring caravans quite successfully. There is more than sufficient space for that. There was also concerns raised in relation to the landscape impact of touring caravans being on the site. As outlined in the report, this site is considered to have a limited visual impact on the area, given its transiting views you get of it along the A48. It's very fleeting views of the site, and the site is now landscaped with fencing, which the touring caravans would be sited behind. So it would have the proposed siting of touring caravans on the site isn't considered to have a detrimental impact on the wider landscape, and there are no reasons to consider that this is an overdevelopment of the site given the scale of the site and the amount of space on there. So planning officers are recommending, as they did last month, that this application is approved and that we allow the site to be used for up to 4 touring caravans for the use of the family, which outlines within condition 4 of the original consent. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Craig. We're all very familiar now with this application, as we discussed it in great deal at the last planning committee meeting. So I would urge members to realise that we are on the one decision making today, as it was 2 last time. Councillor Brown, I believe you're the local member, please.
Yes, could we actually share the screen, because I think it'd be easier if I talk, turn the camera off, and because I want to refer to the plans that the officers have provided, if that's okay. So I'll just turn my camera off, and if we can concentrate on the plans themselves. The decision today is looking at whether or not 4 touring caravans can be added to the site. In my opinion, nothing has changed since the original application, and to allow the 4 touring caravans is still an overdevelopment of this modest site with added visual amenity issues. I am pleased to see that the caravans are located at the top of the site and efforts have been made to provide scale plans, but to try to understand what is going on the site requires moving from one plan to another. Could you go back to the plan, which is just the location plan, please, on the shared screen? Hello?
Please bear with us, Councillor, while they try and locate that. Please be patient.
Thank you.
You doing it, Phil?
Yeah, it's not delayed.
Yeah, it's that one. Thank you. This first plan shows the application site and the land over which the applicant has access, because you can see the red bit is the application site and the other bit is the land over which applicant has access. The application site is a field in front of the Borderways Creek site, which is a shared joint access of the A48 road. And the application site area is enclosed by a gate and some timber fencing. The land at the back of the application site is the former Borderways Creek site, consisting of a former quarried area, which then leads to a field next to the motorway. Presumably the access is still owned by the original owner, as the applicant only has a right of access over it, and there is no other access to the Borderways land at the rear, as it's next to the motorway. The land at this front area is positioned on a gradient falling from north to south and is defined by an embankment to the north and along part of the western boundary and a mature hedge to the east. Access is gained via an existing driveway leading from the A48 to the southwest of the site, over which the applicant has a right of access. In view of this gradient, the flat plateau area at the top is where the 2 park homes are situated. The problem with this slope means that the depth of the area for development is limited. Could you move to the plan with just the park homes and the dimensions on it, which is basically shows the 18 metres and the 24 metres, please? Yes, that one. If you can see that, yes, this one, yeah. The 3-bedroom park home is 13.4 metres long and is known as the Windsor, resulting in only about 4.5 metres of depth left of the total of 18 metres width, because the depth isn't particularly great. 2 of the touring caravans are located below the 3-bedroom park home on the relevant plan and are close to the timber fence below. Each touring caravan is approximately 2.5 metres wide on the plan. According to the plan, this means that the caravans are located within 2 or 3 metres of each other, as each square, as you can see on the right-hand side, represents a metre. Please could you show the picture with the red and white van on it, which is earlier on in the pictures. There's a picture just with a red and white van on it, on its own. Not that one, no. There's one without the utility block, just with a red and white van on it. Yeah, that one. I don't know if you can see terribly well, but if you look at the picture, that picture, you can see there is a slight downward slope in the land prior to the timber fence below. If you look straight forward on the right-hand side, which is close to or within a metre of where the 2 caravans may be located at the bottom edge of this flat plateau area. Could you then move back to the plan with the caravans drawn on it? Which is, yeah, one of the images. Yeah, which is that one. And there you can see the 3-bedroom unit and the 2 caravans at the bottom there, where it says 24 metres and 80 metres from the top end of the bedroom units. So basically those caravans are very close to that timber fence. Most of the Welsh Government planning guidance on gypsy and caravan site design is in relation to council sites, which tend to have generous pitch sizes. However, the Welsh Government Planning Circular 005/2018, which is a planning circular for gypsy, travel and show people sites, which was recently published in June 2018, which is mentioned as a policy consideration at the top of this committee report, actually states in paragraph 61, and I'll just read out what it says, because it says, in considering specific provisions for sites, regard should be had to the Welsh Government's guidance on gypsy and caravan sites in Wales document when considering the site size, layout and facilities. Standards for private sites, which is what this is, can be found in the Model Standards 2008 for caravan sites in Wales document. That document says that caravans must be spaced at least 6 metres from any other caravan, but the distance can be reduced to a minimum of 5.25 metres with fire-related materials cladding added. The plan here shows that those distances are not possible here, as they are within 2 or 3 metres of each other.
Residential.
Sorry?
Sorry, I'm thinking, are you mean that they...
Sorry, I can't hear you. Hello? You muted.
Carry on, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is that there's private site guidance for gypsy and caravan sites, and they say that it should be using this planning circular that says that we should be using this Model Standards 2008 for caravan sites. There has already been, and this is due to the obviously the fire cladding, because it includes the fire cladding thing, it is assumed that these standards are to prevent fire spreading and for the safety of the residents on the site. There has already been a reported incident of alleged arson in relation to this site when operating as stables, and could be seen on the site at the time as charred fencing. The caravans at the bottom of the 3-bedroom park home are close to the timber fencing. The parking is found at the top end of the site, but also the overflow parking on the southwest area of the site on the access land only. In terms of the plan, it's on the left-hand side as you're looking at the screen. The access land also appears to have the cesspit septic tank in the same parking area. It is not clear how the joint access will be maintained. The model standards for caravans, which the planning circular refers to, also states that the plan supplied must be clearly illustrate the layout of the site, including all relevant structures, features and facilities on it, and shall be of suitable quality. I do have dimensions from the previous application of the 3-bedroom park home, which is the Windsor, which is 44 foot by 20 foot, equivalent to 13.4 metres long, which is actually what is shown on this plan, by 6.09 metres, as opposed to a width of 4 metres, which is shown on this plan. In summary, it is clear that the site is overdeveloped in line with the original committee decision from an examination of the plans supplied by the applicant. To have an extra 4 touring caravans results in an overdevelopment of the site, as overflow parking will be on the access area, potentially blocking the joint access for the borderway site behind it, with added highway safety and visual amenity concerns. It is a shame that the applicant did not restrict his application to just 2 touring caravans on this embankment area at the top, which would have been more reasonable for this modest site. One per mobile home, which together with parking and amenity block is what a pitch is normally seen as, not twice the number of caravans to mobile homes. The site is simply not large enough, taking account of its topography. You know, in other words, it's a sloped site for all the development the applicant wants on it. But the committee can only decide on what is before it today. And after the committee has discussed this application, I would like to speak again, Chair, before any vote, but would like to move for refusal at the moment. Thank you. And if I could come back prior to the vote. Thank you.
Yes, I was expecting you to have reason to do a summing up at the end before I take the vote. So thank you for that, Councillor Brown. I brief.
You're mute.
It doesn't take much to turn this thing on and off. Yes, I hope you gathered that, Councillor Brown. I was hoping that you would sum up before we go for the vote. But Craig wishes to put some comments forward before I ask for comments from the committee. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to clarify some of the points and the concerns that have been raised by Councillor Brown. Phil, could you put the plan back up, please, just to show the development.
Which one?
If you go to that one, when you're hovering over, the space shows the scale of the site without the tracking on.
Yeah.
Go back one. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so in terms of the site itself and the guidance with regards to public sites, yes, we have to remember as a planning committee, this is a private site that we've allowed for a gypsy and traveller use, for a family to have a home, and we do have a duty to ensure that we provide appropriate level of accommodation which meets the cultural heritage of the gypsy and traveller community. This is what this application does. As a council, we've allowed 2 park homes to be sited on this site for gypsy and traveller use. However, we have not allowed any touring caravans to be used on the site, which is a part of the cultural heritage in terms of the transient nature of gypsy and traveller community, and it is a right of theirs to have touring caravans. In terms of the last meeting, we did defer the determination of the application based on providing evidence that the site can accommodate and justify the 4 touring caravans being sited on the site. I think this plan does clearly show that up to 4 touring caravans can easily be accommodated at the site. In the south of the site, there's 10 metres by 28 metres. In the top section of the site, there's 18 metres by 24 metres. And in the turning area, there's 16.7 by 14.65 metres. There is more than enough space to manoeuvre a caravan within that turning area and move it within the red line of the application site. There is significant space that is outlined within the site to accommodate up to 4 touring caravans. I do feel, as a planning committee, we do have a obligation under the Equalities Act and the Human Rights Act to ensure that we do provide appropriate level of accommodation for gypsy and travellers, and to not allow the gypsy and traveller community to have touring caravans within this site. I do feel is concerning in terms of how we do believe, particularly given the fact that the caravans can be accommodated within this site. In a similar fashion, if this was a residential property within a suburban character, we wouldn't question how a caravan would be put on a driveway or taken off a driveway. That wouldn't be a way that we would look at a site in terms of how that person and that resident manages their site and manages the use of their caravans. I think for planning purposes, this planned and the site itself, which members have been to several times, is a significant site. There's plenty of space on there to accommodate these caravans without being an overdevelopment of the site and without having any harm to highway safety. In terms of the fire regulations, as I said, this is a private site, so the applicant will have to get a caravan licence from the Environmental Health Officer, so that aspect of the development will be considered. But it might be that the caravans are just stored on this site rather than lived in. But in terms of the fire concerns that were raised, there would be Environmental Health would need to issue a caravan certificate for that, a licence for that. As I said, the plans that have been provided are illustrative only. They're there to demonstrate the car park can be provided on site and the touring caravans can be put on the site. And it's worth remembering is up to 4 touring caravans. So it might be the applicant only has one caravan, 2 caravans, 3 caravans, but these caravans would only be used for their own personal storage and for them to live in, auxiliary to condition number 4, which is just for this family, which is identified on the gypsy and traveller assessment for the council. So this is meeting a genuine need within the council and allowing the family to be able to accommodate touring caravans on this site. So I think in terms of the planning material considerations of this site, I think it's quite clear that this site can accommodate those caravans.
Thank you very much, Craig, for that explanation. I know you went and visited the site after we had the last planning committee. Councillor Harris, you wish to speak now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As has been mentioned, this is a private site. It's allowed to have touring caravans parked on it. The officers have ably demonstrated there's more than enough room for 4 touring caravans, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the argument. I know it's been moved that we don't approve, but I'd like to just state the opposite, and I'd like to move that we do approve 4 touring caravans on this site. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And my ward abuts this site. It's only a matter of yards away. So I've got more than a passing interest in it, which is why I asked for it to be deferred last time, so that I could be certain as to where these up to 4 touring vans would go. And Phil, if you can just advance it, that's the extra slide a minute. That's the one. Yeah, I was concerned when I looked at it about the bottom 2 vans because of the fire regulations, but Craig has explained that one now. I still think that allowing 4 vans on the site is a bit excessive, but I do accept that all of the arguments have been satisfied, so I think I'll probably leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phil Murphy. Craig, do you wish to come back in, please? Your hand is raised. No?
Sorry, Chair, that was from the last time.
Right,
Apologies.
thank you, Craig. Right, I welcome any other members who wish to comment. Right, no other members wish to comment, so I'll ask you, Councillor Brown, to sum up as well before we go to the vote.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the points that have been made in relation to, you know, the council's duty on it. But basically, it could still be 2 pitches, but just with 2 caravans. It's my opinion that it is an overdevelopment of the site and will result in overflow parking and a cesspit tank located in a joint access, which the applicant only has access to and may well block it. Highways considerations normally include the need for joint access to land. In terms of the definition of a pitch, the MCC Gypsy and Traveller pitch allocation policy states that a pitch is an area described to accommodate 1 household and typically includes an amenity block, mobile homes, spaces for parking and touring caravan. The Welsh Government designing gypsy and traveller sites provides a similar definition of a pitch, but indicates that the mobile home and static caravan are alternatives to each other. The MCC definition of a pitch is talking about a pitch of a single caravan for each mobile home, not 2 caravans per mobile home, which is being asked for on this modest site. So in other words, the MCC Council have got 8 pitches that they need. And if 2 caravans were added to this site as opposed to 4 caravans, then this would cover the normal standard for 2 pitches. And I think, you know, basically because they say that a static caravan is an option in comparison with a mobile home, it's one or the other, then I still think that the council could meet its obligations, could deal with the issue of wanting caravans, but without having 4 on the site. I am concerned that this sloped area embankment at the top, I showed from that photograph that there is a slight slope there, and these 2 caravans are going to be sited within a metre of that slope of where the timber fencing is. And I think we do have a duty, you know, to consider the safety of the residents who actually live there. And I appreciate that they're wanting these caravans, but I really do think that 2 caravans would be better and more in line with the fact that a lot of the site can't be used and it's only the top embankment area. And I'm going back to the original condition that was looked at in the first report, where this committee decided that it was overdevelopment, and they said it should be limited to the installation of 2 park homes as detailed and the erection of the utility buildings. No part of the application site should be used for touring caravans, and the reason for that was that more than 2 park homes on the site would intensify use and would constitute unjustified development relative to the identified demand facilities evidenced by the council's gypsy and traveller accommodation assessment. The increase in development would be unacceptable with regards to visual impact on the character and appearance of the application site and wider area in compliance with LDP policies S13, S17, EP1 and DES1. Please therefore refuse this application for up to 2 touring caravans based on the grounds set out in paragraph 1.5 of this report, and I move for its refusal. And basically what I'm saying is I think it would be more reasonable to then we have got good policy grounds here, because it's actually set out in Welsh Government guidance how a private site should be set out, and we're going against this guidance if we actually approve this application. I'm not saying that you know, I understand the reasons why they want caravans, but a pitch is normally 1 caravan with a mobile home and amenity block. It isn't it isn't twice as much as that in terms of what's been asked for here. And so I think there are good reasons to refuse. I mean, if the applicant then came back with a new application with the 2 caravans rather than 4, then it would actually then still cover 2 pitches in terms of what's required for a pitch. And so I hope that somebody will second my motion for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I believe Craig wishes to come back in for some more clarity. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with regards to the concerns that Councillor Brown is raising with regards to the pitches. This is probably overcomplicating the application. I think the application, we've given this site for gypsy and traveller use. We've allowed a 3-bed unit and a 2-bed unit park home to be sited on the site for this particular family. So that is their home established. All this application is requesting is for up to 4 touring caravans to be stored and used as auxiliary accommodation to that those mobile homes, and that is part of the Gypsy and Travellers' cultural heritage. And I have got concerns that by not allowing this site to accommodate any touring caravans, we are given the fact that the site can clearly demonstrate that it can take up to 4 touring caravans, we are going against the advice within the Gypsy and Travelling design guidance with regards to providing appropriate accommodation for this Gypsy and Traveller family. This is their home, and they would like to be able to store their touring caravan at their site in the same way that anyone would like to tour their touring caravan within their home. With regards to the pitches, I think that is confusing the matter, because the original planning application was for additional pitches for the extended family. However, through the various planning applications that have now been considered by the planning committee, this has been defined as for the applicant and his son, and the condition is being retained to ensure that it is kept for that purpose. It's not for any additional pitches, it's not for any additional family members. This would only enable the applicant to be able to keep up to 4 touring caravans at the site, and the plans that have been presented to the planning committee clearly demonstrate that the site is significant. There is a significant amount of space on the site. Highways have considered the highway safety elements of this site, and it's clear that you can manoeuvre a caravan within that site. I don't see any rationale or valid planning reason to refuse planning consent for somebody to be able to keep touring caravans within their sites.
Thank you, Craig. Right, I don't think there's any more members that wish to comment. Councillor Brown has moved for refusal and summed up and still feels for refusal. Does she have a seconder in the committee for refusal, please? Sorry?
Councillor Howard also proposed approval.
Sorry,
Harris.
Yes, but does Councillor Brown have a seconder for refusal? There is none offered, and I believe Councillor Harris moved approval of the application. Do you have a seconder for approval of the application, Councillor Harris?
Sorry, I'll second it, Ruth. Oh,
Right, Councillor Powell wishes to second the application for approval. So could I have a show of hands for approval, please?
I just want to finish it up so it doesn't go on forever and ever. Alan Davis was going to any if I hadn't.
We haven't got anything in the chat bar yet. Right, it's in the chat bar now for approval, against approval or abstain. So please will you vote now for the application?
Sorry, Madam Chair, yet again I have problems with the chat bar, but I would like to move approval of this application. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Webb.
So we've now had 13 responses, including Councillor Webb's declaration for approval. There are 8 for approval, 2 against approval, and 2 for abstention. So that's quite clearly been approved.
Right, thank you very much, Denzel. And that completes the applications for the afternoon. There is one appeal case, and I'm sure you've all noted that, unless anybody wishes to comment on the appeal.
Just to say, Chair, that was, in summary, that was an application for glamping pods, structures. The problem with the reason why we refused it was because the building, the structures were very large in comparison to anything we've approved or put before members in the past. As you know, we normally support these if they're in a sustainable, submitted in a sustainable manner, but these were large. Not helped by 2 of them being very close or indeed joined together, and the inspector agreed with us that they would have an adverse impact and incongruous effect on the local landscape, so they were refused.
Thank you, Phil, for that explanation. I fully agree with that decision, as it was in my ward, and the area is quite open. So yes, I can understand that reasoning of the inspector. Well, thank you all again for your attendance today. I think we have finished a little bit sooner, and thank you for your support in me as chair again for this next, well, it's not quite 12 months, I don't expect, to the next voting. We'll see how it goes, but for all of you, please keep safe and have a good weekend. Thank you for your attendance today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.